We are officially in the home stretch of the snooker season now, and yesterday marked 5 weeks to the day until the action gets started at the Crucible. But before we can even start thinking about the big one, there are 2 more massive titles up for grabs this season, starting tomorrow in Telford for the Players' Championship. And in this video, I will be going through the draw, giving a full preview of all first round matches and seeing how I expect the tournament to unfold. And we start with the world number 1, who is not only head and shoulders above everyone in the official rankings, but also tops the 1-year list by a considerable margin as well. Aided by wins at the Saudi Arabia Masters and the UK Championship, Judd has been one of, if not the standout player of the season. I've mentioned a lot about how he will also have his sights on making the Century of Centuries, but he will also be eager for silverware, having not lifted a title since that UK triumph back at the start of December. And then the idea that this tournament involves the 16 most in-form players goes a little bit out of the window with Li Paifan, who is here due to his wonderful victory in Scotland last December, but apart from that, has only made it to a couple of further last 16s this season. However, that Scottish Open win should not be discounted, with wins over Murphy, Bingham and Allen, before of course beating Wu Yize in that final. This will be the first ever meeting between the pair, but it's really hard to go against Judd here, who I do fancy to get through this opening hurdle without much issue. The 2025 Masters champion is in fine form at the moment and continues to be queuing beautifully. That win in London was followed up by a semi-final at the World Grand Prix last week, and he has now all but confirmed his Crucible ceiling, which had been, for a large part of the season, in really serious doubt. But he will be eager to get more titles under his belt before the end of the season, and he's got a massive chance to do that here as well. The Hawk, well, his season has been highlighted by runs to the finals of the UK and then the German Masters, and this strong second half of the season has also looked to have confirmed that he will also be in Sheffield next month. Murphy has a superior head-to-head record of winning 12 of the 18 previous matches between these two, but Hawkins has beaten Murphy quite a few times on the biggest stages, including at the UK Championship last month. Sean has won their recent match in Hong Kong last week, and I do think he might just be too strong again here. There's an all-Chinese clash in match 3 between the season's surprise package Zhao Guidong and twice beaten finalist Wu Yize. Xiao's season has been really closely replicating what Zhang An had done last season, and he has been very, very consistent with a further final appearance and 2 other semi-finals in addition to his win in Wuhan near the start of the season. And then Wu Yize, well, he earned his spot in this event by virtue of reaching the finals in the English and the Scottish Opens. He's also had a semi-final at the Shootout and a quarter-final in Germany to his name, making this quite a notable breakthrough season for him. There is just one previous meeting between the pair, which Wu Yize won 6-4 at the semi-final stage in Scotland a few months ago, and I am expecting this to go very, very close again, but this time I'll be back in Zhao to edge his way through. John Higgins remains consistent as ever and finally has a title to back up his good form and comes into this event 4th on the 1-year list. That title was of course a long time coming, breaking an unwanted record of 5 straight losses in finals, and as I said in my review of that win, may just make him a bigger threat than he already was going into Sheffield. And he faces a man who had a fantastic start to the season, reaching a final, semi-final and 2 further quarterfinals, but he has fallen off the boil somewhat. And if we ignore the Championship League, he has only won a single match in 2025. He is one of a handful of men outside of the top 16 with a shout of making it to the Crucible, but he has to win this match at the very least to stand any chance of that happening, as you feel he either needs to go deep into this event or at least make sure he's in the Tour Championship in a couple of weeks. Wakelin did win their most recent meeting earlier this season in China, but on current form I don't think I can see him replicating that, so I have Higgins to come through here. Isn't it funny how we can have lightning strike twice, as we have the finalists from the last event meeting first round here? That happened of course with Judd Trump and Barry Hawkins, who were finalists in the UK Championship and then played each other first round at the Masters, and that's happened again here. Robertson of course was imperious in whitewashing Bingham 10-0, but Stewart's off-table news that he received during that final really can't be ignored when looking at that result in isolation. Neil has announced his return to the very top of the game in a big way and thankfully will be at the Crucible, but he may not just be done quite yet, as he does possess a pretty good record in this tournament, having won it 3 years ago and also reached a final in 2019 as well. And then Bingham, well, he was having a pretty miserable season, but that was also true last season, before he then qualified and made it all the way to the one-table setup at the World Championship. The run to the final last week showed it yet again that class is always permanent, and he too knows one win here could propel him into the Tour Championship and perhaps get him a last-minute Crucible seeding. You would suspect that Neil will be strong favourite coming off the back of that drubbing in last week's final, but I'm actually going to go for Stuart Bingham here. I'm sure he'll be extra motivated to get revenge for that loss, and as mentioned, he knows a win or two next week could lead to massive rewards. Mark Selby is another man to have claimed multiple titles this season and looks to be somewhere near, if not completely back to his best again. He may have been a little bit disappointed to surrender a 4-2 lead against Bingham in the quarterfinals last week, but all in all, there are plenty of positive signs for him and his fans going into the World Championship. Si Xiaowei has had a final and a semi-final to his name this season and continues to look the part of someone who could have a really big future in this sport. Similar to Wakelin though, his season has slightly derailed recently, and he has also just won a single match this calendar year, though his Crucible seeding looks to be pretty much guaranteed now. And then when calling this match, I am going to go a little bit against the grain because I'm going to go for Si Xiaowei to upset the odds. Selby, despite landing the British Open at the start of the season, does still have a pretty poor record in these ITV events, and part of me thinks we may see the real Si Xiaowei turn up this week. Mark Williams and Ding Junhui met first round of the Masters in January, and they will do battle again first round here. Mark Williams, again, he is another man who we have seen precious little of in 2025, but I've mentioned before, I don't think we're ever going to see mega consistency from him anymore. It's likely going to be all or nothing, which makes it very, very tough to predict how he will play in any given tournament, because on one hand he could look like a world beater, and then another week could not turn up at all. And then Ding Junhui, his season has felt pretty good, but then when you look at the stats, it's not been as impressive as perhaps I've envisaged in my head. That win at the International Championship was superb, but outside of that, he hasn't made it to a single ranking event quarterfinal this season, with his 3 other quarterfinal appearances coming in invitational events. Neither player is coming into this in red-hot form, and like I say, Williams is just so hard to predict, which makes this even harder to call. I am on this occasion, I think, going for Williams, but that is more of a coin toss rather than being based on any real supporting evidence. But then again, I did back him to beat Ding at the Masters, and Ding won that one. And then finally we've got the current world champion sitting at second on the one-year list with 3 titles to his name. It has been a superb season, as we've talked about multiple times on this channel already this season, and he will start to get prepared to hear the words Crucible Curse about 1,000,000 times over the next few weeks. Mark Allen, on the other hand, does not seem to be so happy in his own game, even suggesting after his World Grand Prix loss that we'd next see him in Sheffield, seemingly forgetting that he had already booked his place in this event. His season in general has been very respectable, actually more than respectable I'd say. He's won a title and got a further 5 semi-final appearances to his name, but now would be the worst possible time of the season to start having a bit of a wobble. And with that in mind, we clearly have 2 men in very different headspaces going into this match, so I do fancy Wilson to come through this. And if the first round matches pan out how I predicted them to, we would have a quarterfinal lineup of Judd Trump against Shaun Murphy, Xiao Guodong against John Higgins, Stuart Bingham versus Si Xiaowei, and then Mark Williams against Karen Wilson. And if we start with that possible Judd Trump v Shaun Murphy clash, what a match that would be. Deep down, I think I really wanted that to be the Masters final. Nothing against Karen Wilson at all. But Shaun Murphy in amazing form against Judd Trump in amazing form would have been a final to savour. And that will be a really, really good quarterfinal. Like I say, Murphy is hitting the ball so well, as is Judd Trump. It would be a coin toss, really. But if that is the quarterfinal that we get, I would go Judd Trump. Xiao Guodong against John Higgins. Really, really good match. John Higgins, that win a couple of weeks ago would have given him just huge confidence. Even at the World Grand Prix, he looked really good in that win against Karen Wilson before losing to Shaun Murphy. And Xiao Guodong, like I say, just continues to look so impressive this season. And I might just go for Xiao Guodong if that was the quarterfinal lineup. Bingham against Si Jiawei, another fantastic match. Loads riding on that, particularly for Stuart Bingham. I think a win here would probably be enough to get him into the Tour Championship. I think he's 13th on the 1 year list. And of course, you need to be in the top 12 to get into the Tour Championship. But he'll need, like I say, either a run to maybe the final here, or at least get into the Tour Championship and get a win or two at the Tour Championship to get into the top 16 as well. But he can give himself half a chance. But in this case, and like I said earlier in this video, I do think we're going to see something from Si Jiawei. So I'm going to put Si Jiawei to win that and get to the semi-finals. And then the last quarter-final, Mark Williams against Kyron Wilson. I seem to remember them playing at the Champion of Champions earlier this season, and I think I completely wrote off Mark Williams, which was a stupid thing to do. But I was sort of blinded by the form that Kyron Wilson was in and kind of lack of form or lack of consistency that Mark Williams has. And I thought, Kyron will win that quite easily. And also the head-to-heads, Kyron dominates their longer matches as well. So it would be stupid to completely write off Mark Williams. And like I say, we could see him play his absolute best again. But based on form, which is what I have to go on, I would go for Kyron Wilson. And then from that point onwards, I would have Trump to beat Xiao Guodong. And I think we do want to see Kyron Wilson and Judd Trump playing another final, particularly Kyron, because he has such a strong record against Judd in finals. And Judd would probably want a crack at revenge in that regard. But I'm going to stick to my guns and stick to this thought that I have when making this video, that we might see something from Si Jiawei. So I'm going to have him to beat Kyron Wilson, reach the final. And Judd Trump v Si Jiawei, I believe they played at the German Masters final last season. Judd Trump won that fairly convincingly after getting off to a pretty good start. And yeah, this may be where the run comes to an end from Si Jiawei and we see Judd Trump win a 4th title of the season. It's not exactly groundbreaking. It's not exactly like I've taken a massive risk with that punt. But I do think that Judd Trump will win at least one more title before the end of the season. And yeah, this could definitely be the week that happens.